Hello, everybody. It is January 21st. Welcome to the Jimmy Mathis Show. Apologize for taking the day off yesterday. Fell on some ice, did a little damage to my nose, threw my back out. So pretty much a lot of fun. But we are back today, jumping at the bit. The big news that did come out yesterday, former Governor Larry Hogan writing an op-ed in the Baltimore Sun, answering a question that many in the state of Maryland have been asking over the last several months, really, which is whether he would seek a third term as governor. A lot of people not understanding the Maryland state constitution thought that he could not do that. You can't have three consecutive terms, unlike the presidency. So Governor Hogan could have. There was a lot of speculation as to whether he would. Governor Hogan releasing a picture in front of his old tour bus, campaign bus, I guess it's probably about 2 months ago, asking if he should sell it or rewrap it and hit the campaign trail. Look, I'm glad he made this announcement yesterday. So, and I'm not being mean here, ladies and gentlemen, but so I never have to speak about Governor Larry Hogan again. I'm not trying to beat up on the guy. A lot of text and phone calls yesterday just from friends in the media, from legislators in Annapolis, asking what my thoughts were and the reason why he's not seeking a third term. And you can read the op-ed all you want. The answer is fairly simple. I've been saying this for years. I'm just glad that we can finally shelve this. Governor Hogan, as a Republican, is unelectable for anything in this state. And that is for several reasons, but the most notable is because of his nonstop vitriolic attacks on President Donald Trump, which were unnecessary. I also believe his inability to grow the Republican Party. He became very isolated as soon as he won the governorship, not building, we talked about this last week, not building the Republican Party, not focusing on down ballot candidates. Obviously, lockdown Larry through the COVID fiasco was a disaster. And I believe that if his last election was a disaster, losing against also Brooks for the U.S. Senate run. That did not surprise me. Keep in mind, people for the most part did not know who Elsa Brooks was at the time. She was county executive in PG County. Even if you lived in PG County, you probably didn't know who she was. But statewide, Governor Hogan, if you look at his approval ratings through his 2 terms as governor, should have ran away with that and was honestly not even a threat. I have said for years, I think that if Governor Hogan wanted to seek any office, more or less the governorship, that what he should have done was switch parties. I know we spent a lot of time last week talking about Ed Hale, who's running as a Republican now, the grief that he has caught for switching parties. I'm not getting into that again. I think I covered that in pretty good detail last week. But the way Ed had a reason for him switching from Democrat to Republican, I'm just talking about the politics of it and the rhetoric of it. Hogan had a story to tell. He obviously could not stand Donald Trump to a point that it came across personal, the same way Wes Moore. And honestly, Hogan was probably worse on the Trump front than Governor Moore is. But he did not seem to really embrace definitely the Republican Party nationally by any means. I think if Hogan would have done what Reagan did way back when, again, Ronald Reagan used to be a Democrat, switched to Republican. The line that Reagan used that became famous over the years was, "I did not leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me." And this is what we were talking about with Ed. The reality is, over the last 30 to 50 years, the Democratic Party has transformed into a new party that would have been unrecognizable back when it was supporting the working man. It simply does not do that right now. I think that Governor Hogan could have made an argument that, and again, I do not personally agree with this, I'm just talking about the sales pitch, that as long as the Republican Party is going to be the party of Trump, which it's been going back to 2015, he can't be part of that. But Hogan, like Governor Moore, spent 8 years running for the presidency, spending his time in Washington on all the Sunday talking head shows, whether it was Meet the Press or ABC This Week, Face the Nation. And what did he do when he had those opportunities? He consistently threw Donald Trump under the bus. And like I have said with Governor Moore, you may not like the guy, but just let it go. You don't need to be in the shadows of Washington, D.C. Our economy is very intertwined into into Washington. It just doesn't make sense. And if you look back at honestly what probably one of the biggest, and that's not fair, but he has 2 wins. I will give credit to Governor Hogan on 2 wins. The first one was fairly a boutique issue, which was reducing the tolls on the bridges and tunnels back when we had a key bridge. Um, and that resonated well for people, especially for those that take the Key Bridge or the Fort McHenry or Harbor Tunnel. You know how expensive that can be. If you're traveling that on a daily basis, so I don't want to call that a boutique issue, but in the overall schemes of a state that has a little over 7 million people, let's be honest, it's kind of a boutique issue. The other one was, in all fairness to Governor Hogan, he left the state with a surplus that more pretty quickly turned into a 1.5 to 1.8 billion dollar debt. And that is what this economy or what this election is going to be about right now, guys, is going to be the economy. And you have Governor Moore that has a pretty rough 3 months coming up right now. You have the Sheraton Hotel that closed its doors this week down near the stadiums. This is significant, guys. There was a Morton's in there. It was more than just a hotel. I could be wrong on this, but prior to Harbor East, I believe that hotel was where the visiting teams, whether baseball or football, where they would stay. There's a high end steakhouse in there. Morton's is in there. It's obviously very close to the convention center. It's more than just symbolic of the state of this city right now. And again, you look at what this election's going to be about. It's going to be about the economy. The Republican Party is looking for someone that can truly mirror the ideals and what this party stands for when it comes to supporting small business, when it comes to being fiscally responsible, when it comes to being a good steward of the taxpayers' money, which it has not been forever. And there are a lot of similarities between Governor Hogan and Governor Moore, minus the spending. But as far as both of them focusing way more time than they probably should on their next job, which is seeking the presidency, you cannot argue the fact that that is the main thing that Wes Moore is doing right now, which is fine, but you still have to do your day job during the day. And now you have 3 other candidates that have officially filed. Ed Hale switched parties. Now, he has not signed on the dotted line. He was on WCBM radio this morning with Sean Casey. And look, there's a lot of reasons why various candidates hold off until the following deadline. I believe it's February 24th or 25th. So it's basically 1 month away. The rules changed recently in the state of Maryland that you cannot file until you have a lieutenant governor picked for the ticket. Ed has not been public about that, but the news that came out today when asked by Sean Casey was twofold. First of all, why haven't you filed? And then before I could even answer, Sean goes, I'm guessing it's probably because you haven't made a pick for lieutenant governor. Ed did not reveal who that is, but did say that that he has made a pick, and that I believe the 20th or 21st he'll go public with that, and then he'll file the paperwork. So the only candidate, as far as Republican goes, that has campaigned in any meaningful way has been Ed Hale. The 2 names that would be the other 2 legitimate contenders was Larry Hogan, who again came out and said that he would not seek the nomination. And the other name is Steve Hershey, who's been down in Annapolis for a while in a role of leadership. The difference between Hogan and Senator Hershey Hogan doesn't really need to put anything up. Hogan doesn't have anything to lose. Steve Hershey would have to give up his Senate seat and also his leadership position. So there's more chips for Senator Hershey to put up than Hogan. I do believe you can't remove ego out of running for office. Anybody that's run for elected office that says there's no ego involved, either you are completely lying to yourself or you're completely lying to yourself. It doesn't mean that should be the reason that you run, but it's definitely a factor. And I would imagine it had to be very difficult for Governor Hogan to lose that last election the way that he did. For a governor that is in the minority party that was polling pretty consistently around 70%, that had to be a loss. And again, I really do not believe that there is a path for him to win elected office in this state as a Republican, whatever the office may be. I really don't. And it is a shame because one of the things that he definitely did for this state was being somewhat fiscally responsible. Obviously, this state was completely frustrated with the policies of Martin O'Malley. That is what made Governor Hogan, through Change Maryland and talking about repealing the 30-some tax increases, fee hikes that Martin O'Malley had ramrodded through. But again, the same thing that led Hogan to the governorship during his two terms is, again, what this election is going to be right now. You have to remember that short of a special session, we just started last week the 90-day legislative session in Annapolis. The primary is June. So this year, I mean, it's hard to believe that it feels like New Year's was only a couple of days away, and we're pretty much ready to put January in the books right now. So between a session that is going to be difficult because you have the Speaker of the House, you have the Senate President, and you have the governor, all that came out last week and said they were not going to raise fees, they were not going to raise taxes. They're upside down by roughly 1.8 billion ish, depending on who you listen to. And now, not only may this session go 90 days, I'm just surmising here, but it would not surprise me if it ends up going into a special session. And that is devastating for Wes Moore because what it does, it it puts the rubber to the road on how inept he is from a leadership role. It really does. And again, if he's saying he's not going to raise taxes and fees, that means that he's making cuts. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are asking, what will they be? So again, Steve Hershey is on the clock. He's the only other real, real name that's been thrown around other than Ed Hale and Larry Hogan. Those were kind of the three big names. So I would imagine that in the next week or so, if not sooner, Steve Hershey needs to, answer the question if he's going to seek the nomination or not. Keep in mind, he's pretty busy right now. Um, so I would imagine that he probably doesn't want that looming over his head. The show that I wanted to do yesterday, and I may do it tomorrow, we were talking about Patrick Gonzalez's poll that came out last Tuesday, I believe it was. Session started Wednesday. This was the day before Tuesday. I don't have the poll in front of me because this wasn't the show I was going to do today, but we may do it tomorrow. It was talking about Moore's approval ratings, and I believe 57% of Marylanders believe that we're overtaxed. The remainder, minus 1%, thought that the taxes were just right. I want to reach out to Patrick on that poll because my question is, who exactly was polled? If you are earning a paycheck, if you are running a business, if you're not on some sort of state entitlement, I find it very hard to believe that the number is only 57% of Marylanders that believe that we are um, that were overtaxed. I would have thought that would have been significantly high. I'd love to know who the 1% was that thought that we were not taxed enough. So I'm going to reach out to Patrick, and I would like to do my own poll for the show and throw that out to the listeners, get an idea of kind of what the temperature is. So we'll do a poor man's poll. But again, the big news happening yesterday was Governor Hogan coming out saying that he wasn't going to run again. And I think he proved this in his Senate bid. I think he's just unelectable. I think he knows it. I'm not being nasty to the guy, but he just had a missed opportunity, and I am sure that losing that Senate race against also Brooks, I'm pretty sure that left a mark with him. And what he was known for was obviously not being a U.S. senator, but it was being a governor. And do you really want, it does come, ladies and gentlemen, to a legacy question. Do you want your legacy to be that you couldn't get your old job back? And by the way, that would be a humiliating loss when you look at Governor Moore's approval rating have been precipitously going down for well over a year. They're not going to get any better over the next 90 days. I can promise you that. The intensity of his unfavorable numbers have been skyrocketing. The chart from Patrick Gonzalez that we showed last week, it is almost within a single-digit gap of approval, disapproval, with the intensity becoming more and more intensified on disapproval. Ladies and gentlemen, if those numbers intersect, it is, it's lights out for Governor Moore. It really is. And don't be surprised if this race gets within 5 points of whoever the Republican nominee is going into the general, around 5 points between the Republican nominee and Governor Moore. This election starts to get national attention. It just does. Because I understand that Governor Moore wants the presidency, but that does not happen. That's an up-road hill to trek right now. He loses this election, or even if he wins and it's close, it is crippling for him on the national stage. It really is. And again, between this session, the bridge, energy cost, the fact that Annapolis right now is focusing on ICE, which is amazing, that is your top priority when you look at the hurt that is going through the state right now. That is what you're focusing on. But they know that this election cannot be about the economy. And that's exactly what it is about. And that is not going to change. So, again, nothing nasty about Governor Hogan, but I got to tell you, I'm glad that news came out. I think it's good for the party. I think it's good for him personally. It would have been a humiliating loss. And again, you never know. That's why they play the game, as they say. But just based on where we're at right now, what I believe, and people laugh at me when I say this, but what I believe was a pretty failed time as governor. The loss against also Brooks, I'm pretty sure that is not how Governor Hogan would have wanted his legacy to be. So, again, apologize for yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. It is great to be back. The shows are dropping Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You can email me, jimmymathis@gmail.com. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out past shows. You can follow us on Facebook. Audio version of the show lives where all of your podcasts live: Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Pandora. We are on Rumble, obviously YouTube, on X. So the social media platforms are the best way to connect with us. It's going to be a fast 90 days. My goal, guys, is not to have local politics be the only thing that we talk about here, but obviously that was pretty significant news. Not surprising news, but significant news, with former Governor Hogan coming out and saying he would not seek a third term as governor here in the state of Maryland. Everybody have a great day. Be safe. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye. How to make dust fly. How to